By the way, we're going to give another minute or so. I know we ask this every week, but any questions or anything like that that comes to mind, you guys feel free to drop them in the chat, and I'll be here the whole time. I'll be sure to answer them as promptly, quickly as possible. It's a semester of a lot of change going on, and we intend to change all to be for the better. So, if you guys ever have a question, feel free to drop it in the chat, direct message me, or just talk to any of us Threshold staff or artists and Black and student orgs. Throw it right by us. We'll get back to you pretty much right away, especially if you give it to us live in the chat here. Could be a question like, hey, when what are the rest of the shows looking like? What other shows do we have this semester? When are auditions coming up? If we want to audition, or just like, hey, like, what's up, Luke? How you doing? Or just, well, it is about noon, so I think we're gonna go. Hi, thank you, Em. My day's been good. How's your day been? Hope your day is treating you quite nicely. Great. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Hey everybody, welcome to Theater Threshold Showcase on this 17th of September. I'm gonna go ahead and take attendance in a minute here. In the meantime, today we're gonna be doing the workshop for our showcase for a lot of different Adobe programs and stuff like that, and just helping everybody get used to it, because that's going to be a big part of what we've been doing for the last year and a half, and probably for the next few weeks as well. Everybody, this is Emily MacDonald. Hello, Emily. How are you?
Hi, everyone.
She will be guiding us through our workshop today, and if you guys have any, I mentioned ask me questions for sure, of course, but especially if you got something like specific to this workshop, please go ahead and let her know. And yes, I see your question, will this recording be available to watch later? I can make that recording available. Yeah, I'm going to upload it to a Google Drive, and I'll talk to Jeff Januszewski to see if he wants me to just give it to students who ask for it, or to just make it through an email blast widely available to everybody. So yeah, Rachel, I see that you want it, so I'll be sure to get that to you. If anybody else wants it, let me know. Otherwise, I'll talk to Jeff and see if just send it out to everyone. So, cool. Well, Emily, I think I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. And Rosemary, I see you. Cool. I'll take note of all the folks that want this to have at it. Yep, Emily, all you.
All right, awesome.
I'll be here.
All right, thank you. So today we're going to talk about the basics of Photoshop. And it's something that I use regularly in my own design process, and I find it to be incredibly creative. Once you get some facility with it, it's a really wonderful program to use. So it's very exciting. And I'm going to start by kind of showing you a little bit about how to get the program, which is available through CSULV as a student. And here I'm just dropping in a brochure that the school has printed, which just indicates a little bit about where you can go to get this. And take special note that it does say that if you are graduating, if you subscribe before the end of the year, your subscription will last for a full year after that point. So I know some of you have asked me recently about having a subscription after you graduate, because it is a bit pricey to buy it out or to buy it monthly. But this is a really good way to have it for just $20 a year. So I'm going to share my screen and we will go a little bit through this. So just one moment here. So one way you can get instructions on how to do this is on your single sign-on, which may look a little different than mine. You can go to your software depot here, which will bring up product search. And if you type in Adobe Creative Cloud, it will bring these instructions up where you can link directly to Adobe Creative Cloud here to download. And it gives you just detailed instructions on how to put in your own information. Will bring you to this page here. And I think there is another page here that gives you also instructions. And I'll put this here in the chat. Okay. So that have any of you already downloaded Photoshop so that you can play around with the program a little bit today as we go through it? Okay, any other questions on downloading the program?
Is it possible for us to, like, do we need to pay for it ourselves, or is the program provided by the school?
You do have to pay $20, but that's for a whole year. And so it actually is a really great deal. It's an educational discount that's even better than most educational discounts that CSULB has arranged with Adobe.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to put one more document here in the chat, and this is for your reference as I go through the program today. It's a little cheat sheet that I put together. You can keep this on or as I speak today. I'm going to open up the program here, and then I will screen share in just a moment. Okay, and if that's still uploading, just so you know, it's going to take a minute. Oh, you know what? Sorry, there's an error with that. Just 1 second. Hold on, that did not work. Just a second. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. Oh, is it not letting me do it? There we go. Okay, that's the correct cheat sheet for you for today. So what I wanted to say is that if I do go too quickly over something, or if you need me to review anything again, please just stop me as I'm going through things and ask questions you need. All right. Guess we'll do this here. Oh. All right. So when you open Photoshop from your desktop, from your tool bank on the side here, your programs list, the first thing that will open is this create new. And this is has many sort of different options that you can choose from, and you can then also customize whatever kind of canvas that you want to work off of. So it is called a canvas. So it's sort of like, what size dimensions do you want your canvas to be, and what resolution do you want it to be? So here on the side, you can indicate the width and height of essentially the paper that you want to work off of. And you have choices here as well if you want it to be in a different sort of measurement, but inches, of course, is probably the easiest way to think about it. And I think it's important to look at these measurements and think about your final goal for what you want to do with what you're making, so that your foundation of what you're creating on is going to serve your purposes. So, you know, a 10 by 14 inch piece of paper might be nice to print maybe in a portfolio, but that's going to be maybe much less beneficial to you if you're projecting this, you know, 30 feet by 40 feet, you're going to need really high resolution, and you're going to need something a little bit larger so it doesn't pixelate. So kind of think about what your resource or what your end goal is at this point. For right now, I think I often will do, a 17 by 11 for, for a scenic rendering, and, usually a landscape orientation. Costume renderings, you're going to want to do a portrait orientation, and make sure that, it's wide enough that if you need to attach other materials or whatnot to that, you're thinking sort of at this point about it so you don't have to adjust later, because that can get tricky. So resolution is here. 150 is great for, kind of more smaller, simple projects. If you are going to print something and you want it to be high quality, you're going to want your resolution to be 300 pixels per inch. So that stands for PP, or PPI stands for pixels per inch. So that means there's 150 pixels per every inch of your image. It's also very important to be aware of what your resolution is set at as you start your piece, and think about what you need, what quality you need for what you're working on. Like a class project, probably 150 is going to be fine. The Photoshop files get very large, very fast, and they end up being sometimes 50, 60, 70 megabytes. It can be very challenging sometimes to upload them if you need them somewhere else. To save them, it can sometimes, your computer can even start to get unhappy with you and just go like, I can't handle this. This is too big. So if you know that your computer is, challenged with some of that, like be aware that your resolution is a direct factor in how well your program is performing. 150 is usually pretty good, to not have to worry too much about that. But once you get up to 300, it can be tricky. And you will start adding in other images into your file. So just remember, every time you add an image from Google or something, it's adding its own size to your file. So if you're adding a 2 megabyte image, you're tacking that on to your own file size, which is how they get so large very quickly. Okay, so let's just say we want to do that for right now. You just hit create and you've got a blank canvas here. All right, that was a lot about sort of getting started. Just get rid of that. Okay, so the first thing we will do, sorry, I see there's another little thing over here. Let's close that. The first thing that we will do is kind of go over just sort of the general setup here of everything that you're looking at. I have some other files open right now, so you actually see there's 4 different files, and we're just here on this last tab at the moment. So the first thing I'd like you to take a look at, actually, you know what? I'm going to make this full screen. Hold on. Sorry, wrong thing. Oh, it's not going to work, is it? Okay, sorry about that. Okay. Okay, so the first thing, and probably the most important thing in Photoshop to be aware of, is your layers tab over here. When you open your program, it's possible it might be on properties or one of these other tabs. These are, good to know about, but layers is really your home base. And this is what you're going to need to keep up so that you can see everything that you're doing. And it's going to start to stack them all in this area. So Photoshop works like layers of glass, like one on top of the other, and you're looking through all those layers as you're kind of like building your piece. over, you're kind of looking through everything to create one final image. And you can then, turn on or off your different layers as you need to. So the first thing that I always do when I open a new project, even if it's an image that I've put in directly into Photoshop without a canvas, which I would not recommend doing too much, because the resolution of that original image will be all you have to work off of. And it's much better to decide yourself your resolution and your size and then put images into this. So the first thing that I do is make sure that I don't mess with my background layer. I want to keep that as it is, so I always have it to return to. And so the first thing I do here is come down to this little square, or I'm sorry, this little cross in a square. And that adds a new layer. And so I can begin working on a new layer, and I'm leaving my background as is. So, so on this new layer, we'll draw something so that we can kind of talk about the rest of these properties. So over here are all your tools. It's like your, all your artist tools that you have, brushes and erasers and different things. This top one here is the move tool. And if you hover over these, it will tell you a little bit about them, which is nice when you're starting to learn the program. If I am not in sort of a command in a tool, I always come back to move tool. And a lot of things will not function unless you've clicked out of a tool and you've come back to move. It's like coming back to your cursor, or coming back to X and Vectorworks. That you really, this is like your restart place, right? So move is your go-to standby. But for right now, we're going to click here on brush. Okay. And there are many brush options that you can choose from. I like this Kyle charcoal pencil. It's a nice kind of, you can adjust the size of it here with this toggle if you want to. And I'm just going to make a mark here so we can kind of play around with this. So I'm going to go through some basic key commands and talk about some general ways to adjust things. So one way that you can adjust first and foremost the size of your brush without having to go up here is you can click the bracket keys, which are the keys to the left of the letter, I'm sorry, to the right of the letter P. So this makes your brush larger. Clicking the bracket key on the right, and bracket key on the left makes it smaller. So it's a really quick and easy way to adjust your brush. Okay. So the next way that you can adjust what you have on this layer is directly in the layer itself. So one, you can turn that whole layer on or off with the eyeball. So making it visible or invisible. And that's really useful if you want to take sort of different pictures of what you're making and under different progressions of what you're doing. So you can have a scene that has a certain lighting scheme that you then turn that off and turn on another lighting scheme, and you can kind of save your Photoshop image in different views if you want to think about it that way. So another way that you can adjust your layer is here in opacity. And this is something that is really useful, and I find I use it constantly with every layer I make if I want to adjust the translucency of it, basically, the transparency of it. Especially if you want to indicate lighting or projections and what you're, it's really important to play with this so it starts to look realistic, and it doesn't look just a picture on top of something. And then later on we'll talk about this also once we get some more layers in here. We'll go back and talk about that. You can adjust some of this up here as well. I see it's blocked right now. Can you all see that? So you can adjust opacity and flow, with which both adjust sort of how much sort of like ink basically comes out of your brush, right? So you know, let's see, flow is at 50%, and we can also, you know, we could bring opacity down, and you could even just, you know, make your brush exactly what you want this way, and then you always have the way to adjust it in layers later on as well. So you know, you have a lot of flexibility in all these different places. All right, so so let's talk about, I'm gonna delete, and that to reverse or go back is sort of same as most programs. On a Mac, it's Command Z, and on a PC, I think it's Control Z. So you can just work your way back, same as most ways. All right. So this next tool here is the rectangular marquee tool. And in this way, you can select around what you want and adjust it. And I'm going to do Command D to deselect. I realize I actually don't have that on my cheat sheet, so if you want to add that, you can. You can right click, or if you don't have a mouse and you only have a trackpad, hitting Control while you click on this allows you to this tool to come up with the other options, the sort of different styles of this one. Okay. This is the polygonal lasso tool. And this allows you to choose specifically, this is often really good if you want to zoom in and you want something specific to select and adjust. This is a great tool for that. And then you've got a sort of specific region adjusted. So I'm going to Command D again to deselect that. That's important. It won't do anything. Otherwise, escape doesn't work or anything like that. This quick selection tool is often very, very nice. If you have really high contrast in the image, you can select quickly one thing or another. And that's a really nice way to do things quickly. This here is the crop tool, and this crops your entire canvas. This sounds like a really nice and easy way to make adjustments on things, but I will warn you that once you do this, you have only like one chance to undo it. Once you start doing other commands, you can never undo your crop, and it can be very sad if you realize you needed to undo that. Your work is gone that was outside of that crop. So I really highly recommend that you don't use crop for lengthy projects where you're really working on something for a long time. Use a mask instead, which we'll go over later. This is a tool I don't actually use much. This frame tool, sort of placeholder for images. I think that's more if you're doing graphic design, so that can be useful if you're creating posters or like event images, but you don't really need a placeholder so much for things like that. It can be nice. This eyedropper tool is a really lovely tool because if you import an image, which maybe we should do now so we can reference that, just hold on a minute, let me grab something. Let's see here. Okay, so we're gonna just drag in an image from our desktop. So it just drags in directly. You don't have to do anything else fancy about it. Just drag it in. And it'll come in like this with a blue X on it. And what you want to do is hit return or enter on the keyboard to place it into your file. And once it is there, I'm going to go back up to move so you can kind of see it's a separate thing here. And it's also created its own layer by doing that as well. And excuse me. The first thing that you will want to do is to rasterize any images that you import so that you can edit them. If I try to adjust it, it's, oh, well, I'm sorry, you do that one. It'll usually say, no, you can't do that. You have to rasterize it first. So if you go to rasterize layer, and you can see now that little lock has been removed, and now we can do most anything we want to this. So we'll just keep going through these tools before we play around with this image again, but I'll show you that with the eyedropper here, you can select a color directly from your image if you want to use that color for something else in what you're creating. So it's a really, this is a really useful tool. The spot healing brush here, you can kind of see what the video is playing here. But basically it finds between two different things. It'll find the median sort of like average tone and shading. So it can be useful for sort of quick little things, like you have some little splotch of something you want to get rid of. You can try the healing brush tool, but I mostly don't use that. It's not super successful. I use the clone stamp mostly if I need to do something like that. So brush, as we said before, you can also right click on this and get other options as well, but brush works for most things. How are you guys doing? Am I going too quickly, or you guys following along? This is the clone stamp. Okay. So clone stamp, see, this is very small, so I'm going to use my bracket key to make it larger. And I will show you that if I go to my layer where I have this squiggle, I can, by holding down the option key and selecting what I might want to clone, I can click on that, and it's now going to copy that wherever else I click. Okay. So it'll always stay the distance away from the circle that I originally clicked it on. So wherever I go, that distance will be what is cloned. Does that make sense? So you could go over here and go, okay, I want to actually clone this entire line. So I'm just going to stay the same distance away and do that. So that can be useful if you need to fix images later on. This is a history brush tool. This can be useful later on if you really need to get rid of something that's no longer, you can't backtrack with Command or Control Z, and you need to find another way to get back an original image. Eraser works like a normal eraser. You can see the video here as it's doing that. This is kind of similar to crop. Once it's erased, it's gone. You only have one chance to undo, and then after that, if you start working on other commands, that part of that image is forever gone. So I really don't use erase unless, you know, very simple projects. Gradient tool, I also don't use much. I know sometimes people enjoy using this for lighting, but I find it feels a little bit like manufactured. It doesn't feel very organic to me, but it'll take whatever two colors you have in your color palette down here, and if you make a square, it will radiate that color scheme from dark to light or light to dark. You have options up here of some different gradients. Oh, here they are, different sort of formations of gradients that you can play around with. You know, those are fun, but I don't find them too useful most of the time for my work. But okay, let's see here. So this next is a smudge tool. This really, you can choose what kind of brush you might like to work with to do it, but it'll just, oh, went back to, it kind of like smooths out, like if you had if you smudged your pencil line on a paper. So. All right, this next tool is, I find very useful. It's the burn tool, and if you right click, it's the dodge tool. So it kind of can toggle back and forth between these two tools. Now what these do is they either, they change your exposure of your image based on what you want more of. So the dodge tool, if we go over here in our layer to our red satin, it's going to bring out all the highlights in your image as it is. So it's not adding anything to it. It's just increasing the exposure of that image wherever you put your, you know, your cursor over. And then if you right click to burn, it will decrease the exposure wherever you are moving your tool. And this can be really, really useful when, you know, we're thinking about theater, and theater often has really high contrasted light. It can be really useful for costume design when you want something to look more three-dimensional and shade one side of the garment and highlight another. Really helps things become more three-dimensional. So this is a really great tool. This is a pen tool, so I think about this more for graphic design, where you can kind of create an arrangement and work within it. A text tool, so this is really great. You can kind of click here and type your name and your project and whatever else, and it, you know, works like any other program. You have, you know, you have all these fonts to work with, and you know, regular and bold. So that's sort of I think self-explanatory. Path selection tool, you can kind of see in the video here what this one does. You kind of choose sort of an area of an image that you want to work with. This rectangle tool here, this can be useful. So if I'm here in layers, actually what I would probably do here is create a new layer, and on a black background. Oops, sorry, I didn't want to talk about that yet. Okay, I'll talk about that in a minute. And say, okay, I want a black background for something. I can just draw a rectangle over my canvas, and I've got whatever color I've chosen down here on my palette. So it's a quick and easy way to I'll go back to layers here, and I'm just going to turn that off. and this one too. You can also delete layers directly. So I can click here on this text layer, which I don't need anymore, and just hit delete on your keyboard and it just goes right away. It's good to kind of clean up your file too. If you have lots of things like that, it does add to the size of your file. This is rotate view. I'll show you what I normally do for rotations, but this is a way to rotate your whole canvas section. Zoom tool, you can kind of press your track pad, and then you can also just use your fingers to kind of zoom in and out like you would on a phone. Okay, so down here you have your default foreground and background colors, and then here you can select the colors that you want. So we'll double click on this first one here, and it'll bring up this color picker. And then you can click on anything within this zone and choose a color that you might like. You have this slider to go through all of the different ranges. And this is more saturated and less saturated color. So you just kind of see what you like. And once you get something you like, and say okay, and that'll then show up here as your color, that whatever you do, that's the color it's going to be at this point. You can always click back to this default to go back to black and white. Let's say you do pick another color, click OK. Oh, it's not doing. Okay, never mind. It's fine. Okay. And if you click here on this, the arrow, it will switch that to background white to foreground. So it's just another way to think about it. This is edit and quick mask mode. I actually don't use that much. It could probably be useful, but I usually use masking over here. And this last one is just a screen mode. So you can get rid of all of these palettes and just have like a full screen mode if you want. So one way to do it. Okay, any questions before I move forward? Like that's a lot of information. Okay.
I have a question. How do we access this video later for reference?
I think Luke is taking a recording of this and we'll share it with everyone.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Is that Kate?
It is. Thanks.
Okay. Are there other chats that I might have missed? Okay. All right, great. Okay, so I'm going to go back to move. So I'm out of any sort of commands. And let's talk a little bit about these last few sort of tool things down here, and then maybe we can get into some more fun things in a second here. So here you have all your layers. Really good tip is to double click and rename any images that you bring in from the internet so that you can quickly reference everything, because sometimes they get very small and it can get confusing if everything is gobbledygook and you want to sort of keep track of what you're doing. You can lock your layers. If you right click, it's not showing up. Yeah. Effects is a wonderful tool. Let me drag in another image and we can play with that. Okay, so let's drag this image in. I'm going to hit return again to place it into my file. And I'm going to rasterize it. So up here to layer, I'm sorry you can't see this top tab up here, but if you go to layer, rasterize layer, it will make it so that you can now edit it. And the next sort of the one key command I use more than any other is Command T or Control T if you're on a PC. This gives you these this box around your image that has little points at the corners and the midpoints where you can stretch your image and it'll stay in ratio, which is great. So you can decrease it or increase it based on the size you need. If you hold down the shift key, you can stretch it. So that is an option as well. You hit escape to get out of that and have it go back. So let's just make it sorry. Okay, so you can hit return to get the size that you want. This file already has no white in it. It's like a pre-manufactured Photoshop file, so but we can talk about how to get rid of white in a minute. But this one is just black on no background, which is really nice. So let's put an effect on this. Go to bevel and emboss. You can create shadows, which is really lovely and makes things look more three-dimensional. So we want to do an outer bevel. And you can see there that starts to create some shadows. Although this is a little bit trickier because this is just a black and white image, but you get the idea that you can kind of change things. And then you can choose where your light source is. So let's say the light's coming over here, or the light's over there. So that it matches the rest of your scene, you can choose where that light source is in this point. If you have the global light clicked, use global light, it'll change the light on everything that has an effect in your drawing, which I find usually is actually problematic. I don't find that I want the same light source on every single thing, but just so you know what happens there if that happens to be default check on yours. Okay. This tool down here is an add layer mask tool. So what we can do that with this image right here. If I click this, it will add sort of this secondary linked image here. And what that does is it's like putting another layer of glass on top of this particular image. And then if we go to our brush tool, and it doesn't really matter what kind of brush, you can basically delete or erase different parts that you might not want when you are on black. And then if you switch to white, it brings those back. Okay, so that's always accessible at all times, which is why masks are better to use than an eraser. Okay, does that make sense? Opacity and flow are not 100%, so I'm getting a bit of a shadow. It's not a total erase. So if you want it to be, make sure those are both up to 100%. This can be, useful to have down here in a really low way, and just kind of slowly, kind of a little bit, erase little bits of things, which you could then bring back later if you wanted to. But it's a nice way to kind of create a bit of a sort of a progression of the image from out of focus into in focus. Okay, let's see. Last few things here. I know we're kind of already getting to time. This is for create new fill or adjustment layer, which I don't usually use. I do use this create a new group, which is this folder here. I could select these layers. So I could click on this first one and hold down the shift key and click down to select these all three. And then I can click the folder here at the bottom, and it will put them all into this group. So they're in this sort of subfolder here. And then I could, could say this is one or something like that. And then it's an easy way to turn on or off that whole group of images. And that can be really useful when you're doing things later on. I find though that I want to really make sure all of these files are where I want them before I put them into a group, because after that, it's harder to select them easily. As you can see here, it's saying like, if I wanted to move this, it's going to move all of them. And that's, usually not the case. So if you accidentally did that, or it gets too annoying and you want to take your things out of a group, just same as before, select the ones you want and then just drag them up and out of that folder. Okay. And then you could just delete that folder. We talked about the adding new layers, which is always good if you want to, also, create a new light source or something. Do them on a separate layer. It really is, that way you can adjust it individually and it's not locked and linked into something else. And then, trash can is just trash can, but the delete button on your keyboard works fine too. So let's say we did want this to be a light source. Obviously it doesn't look like one now, right? It just looks like weird stuff. But here in layer, you can adjust the opacity, and you can also try out different filters for it. And there's like lighten, which can have some really lovely effects. You see how it's really just interacting with what's underneath it. Actually, let's put the red satin underneath that because you can see then how that affects that. So you can see that, let me get this larger. So because this works like layers of glass that you're looking through from the top one all the way down to the bottom, if I want the light on top of this, I'm going to put it on top and I'm going to put the red satin below. So everything that's sort of above the next one is visible on top of the one below it. Does that make sense? Okay, so so let's say we go back to this light. Actually, let's put that above the people as well here. And then you can see here these different filters and how they can have different effects. And you might have something that might be interesting for your project. I mean, this is obviously not the best light source that I just created, but let's see how it works here. Okay, so the other thing that can be really, really useful when you're starting a new project is, let's say you put this image in on top of another image and you want to get it into scale with the rest of your image that you might have crafted in a certain scale roughly. You can put this layer onto multiply and it'll make it so that you can see through it. You can see everything underneath it. I don't know if there's a better way to explain this. Let me put in another picture here. Okay, here's a cracked glass texture. Make it bigger, Control-T and make it larger. So right now it obliterates everything underneath it because it's completely solid. I'm going to rasterize this. But if I put this on multiply, I now am seeing through it. Of course, it's very dark. I can take the opacity down so I can really see, and then I can kind of look at where I might want to place this. And then I could bring the opacity back up, or I can, play around with these different filters in different ways. That make sense? Okay. All right, so I'm going to turn this off and I'm going to talk with you about how to adjust an image. Okay. Okay, so there are a couple other really basic key commands which I use regularly. So the first is Command U or Control U on a PC. This brings up a hue saturation pop-up window. And whatever layer you are on, you can adjust the saturation of that. So you can bump up the saturation to super intense. And you can also completely desaturate it to grayscale. And then you can hit 0 or escape to get out of that. And here you can adjust the color of your image. This is a little like color tab here. You can hit 0 to go back to default where it was. For images that are black and white, you can colorize them here down here on the right. You can click that and it'll do the same thing. So it'll colorize the entire image, and you can still play with this toggle as well. And then you can always hit escape or cancel to get out of this and just have it set back to where you were. The next basic key command is Command L or Control L. And what this does is it adjusts the contrast of your image. And these are the 3 little toggle triangles to do that. So this will bring up, increase all the highlights. This will increase all the shadows. Really useful for images when you need to adjust them to fit in with your other images so they don't look out of place. So you can kind of match it to what your other, what you're creating. And then here is a little bit more of a subtle way to adjust both light and shadows sort of simultaneously. I really do use sort of the side ones to kind of increase highlights and shadows. You get some really interesting effects that way. I don't really
Emily.
use this.
Hey,
Is there a
So
question?
sorry to bother you. Yeah, sorry, this is Luke. So sorry to bother you. Just want to let you know it is 12:50. So do you mind if I just make a couple announcements to the students before, because they're no longer required to stick around at this point. Just gonna make a couple announcements as they're getting ready to go, if that's all right.
Sounds great.
And thank you again so much, Emily. You're doing a fantastic job. I appreciate all the effort that you put in. This is wonderful. Yeah,
Great.
so thank you everybody else for for sticking around. Feel free to stick around because there is still a little more left to go. We just want to give you a couple of announcements and reminders. First off, we have our open mic night sign up. That's going to be 2 weeks from tonight. Jen White sent out the sign up email for that. Go ahead and use that link or follow us at CSULB Theater Hub on Instagram, and you'll be able to find the sign up links for that as well. Also, we are going to have 2 more audition announcements coming up next week. So keep an eye out for that. If you guys looking for shows again to audition, like I said, those will be announced next week. And yeah, and this one's not as official of an announcement, but just so you know, we are going to try to see. We don't know yet, but we're going to try to see it next week because we're going to start our actual shows and the full scale productions next week. The streaming and showcases of them. We're going to try to see if we can get it, if we can be out here and watch it on the TV. If we can get some students in person. That so keep an eye out for that. Again, no word on that yet, but we're going to push that next week. So just a heads up for you. But yeah, like I said, open mic sign up is available. So look at your email from Jen White, and there's going to be 2 more auditions next week available as well. So keep an eye on those. Thank you guys. So yeah, again, feel free to stick around for the rest of the workshop here. Otherwise, you guys are good to go, and please do whatever that suits you best. Thank you guys. Back to you, Emily.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, just do a few more before we end for today. Those of you who want to hang around for the last 7 minutes here. So the last thing I really wanted to share with you is how to sort of edit your image directly. And one thing that's really great with images like Fabric is you can go up to Edit Transform, and you can go here to Skew. And you can make something sort of appear to be in perspective like this here. You can hit escape to get out of that. But you can also do some really great things with warp here, where you can you can sort of curve your image and get something that's much more organic. And this is really wonderful to play with fabric. You know, and of course you can come back up here to your polygonal lasso tool and you know, kind of cut out different shapes as well. Let's see if there's another. This magic wand tool can be useful too. It'll select sort of specific zones, whether they're dark or light, whatever you clicked on, and you can just delete that directly and take it out of your drawing. So there's a couple, you know, there's lots of different ways to do things. You kind of play around with what might work for you. Let's see what time it is, 12:55. So that's another good way to, you know, import an image that you have found and delete. So let's say here's a chair. Rasterize that, zoom in, and I'm going to go to quick selection because I know that that's going to work really well for this. And I can just delete all the white around that chair so that I just have the chair to work with. If you have something with high contrast like this, it works really lovely. You know, you can use your bracket keys to get smaller into those little nooks and crannies there. And now you have a chair. Command D to deselect that last selection there. Go up to move. And if you go to Command T, you can then you can shrink your chair down, hit return, and place it in your scene. And it's a really easy way to use images that you find on the internet. You know, take pictures in books. You can import those into what you're creating and really customize your environment. If there's any last things, any last questions from anyone?
I have a question about the brush you were using. Looked like you made it from scratch. How did you
I didn't actually. It is a new brush that they have with the most recent Photoshop. So
I see.
Yeah, it's called Kyle. There are like a couple different Kyle brushes.
But if you wanted to make like a chair shaped brush, how would you assign that as a brush tool? Is that possible, or is that maybe not for this particular project, but for,
you know, I think that might be possible. You'd have to create a symbol to do that. But you know what? It's not something I do, and I don't know.
okay.
That's something
totally
I can think of doing in Vectorworks, where you create a symbol and then you can use that symbol. But it's not something I do in Photoshop. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? I'll just show one last thing then. So if we go to the layer here with the fabric, you can go up to filter, filter gallery. And there's also here some really wonderful filters that you can play around with. Oh, let me make this smaller here. You know, you can sort of look at your image in different ways. And sometimes this can be a nice way for your image to look more like a sketch. If you need to integrate it with a sketch you've already created. So there's distort, there's sketch filters here, charcoal, graphic pen, like this one sort of gives you that a feeling that this has been hand sketched. And sometimes that can help integrate a file, an image file that you find if you need to integrate it into the rest of your image. These can be, so if we said, okay, you know, it's now that, you know, we can undo it, you know, what I sort of bring that down and to copy it, and then go back to this. So there's, now we have two layers. We've got the the sketch copy, right? And then we've got the original. And the sketch copy, you could kind of bring that opacity down a little bit so that then you've got that quality on top of the original image. Does that make sense? So there's just so many options with Photoshop. It can be really fun, really creative. And, please reach out if you have any questions about projects that you're working on that I can help with. And I am taking teaching costume design in the spring if you would like to do some more Photoshop with me then. So thanks all.
Thank you so much, Emily, for all the work that you guys have done today. Yeah, and thank you everybody for sticking around and being part of this workshop. I hope that everybody was all good. If there's any questions, feel free. Emily, do you have contact information that you'd love to post in the chat for them to send questions your way?
Absolutely. Yep, all right, yeah, please reach out if you need anything. All right, have fun.
Cool.
Enjoy. Thanks all.
Thank you, Emily.
Bye.
And thank you guys so much for coming to the meeting today. We will see you guys next week and hope you have a good one.